Hi to all of our attendees. We are very excited to be in the last kind of 30-minute stretch of our conference today, our HR conference. And I am joined by some amazing HR leaders in the HR world, and very excited, and I really appreciate all of the panelists for being here today. We are going to talk about what's happening kind of surrounding the pandemic, obviously, strategies, how their organizations have been impacted. So we're really excited to have a very positive panel today and really discuss a lot of HR issues and strategies and things that maybe, as an attendee or a member of the conference you can relate to. So I'm going to start by having everyone go around the room and introduce themselves. If at any time you have any questions for any of the panelists, you can put them in the chat, the stage chat, and we would be happy to answer them as we go along. We want this to be an open forum and discussion, and really a collaborative effort between attendees and panelists. I do have some questions that we're going to go through, but again, if you have any questions at all, please put them in the stage chat. So we're going to go around and we're going to do a brief intro of each of our panelists today. They're going to talk a little bit about their background in HR and their organization, just so you know who they are. And then we're going to go through a series of questions. And we only have about 27 minutes, so we're going to do lightning round questions. So again, thank you to the panelists for being here. I feel honored to be in the presence of so many wonderful HR leaders. So we're going to start with Cheryl. So Cheryl comes from Sorry, Cheryl. I'm going to start with Cheryl to introduce herself and her background. She's an HR executive and business coach, so I'll let you introduce yourself, Cheryl.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to all the conference attendees. My name's Cheryl Sproul, and I'm an HR international executive. I've been practicing HR for far too long. We won't even talk how many decades. But I've focused my career on vertically integrated companies with a North American footprint, primarily in the retail and wholesale space. My most recent employer was Umbra Canada, one of probably the world's premier original design consumer products companies. Just recently, I've reinvented myself as a business coach, and have started working with a lot of entrepreneurs and solo entrepreneurs in the areas of launching a business in the pandemic, post-pandemic era.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're looking forward to for you to share some of the decades long of advice. I'm sure this is one of the most challenging times that you faced in the HR world.
Yeah, I thought SARS was challenging back in 2003, but I'd say this pandemic has kind of taken it all to a really new level.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Anna, you're next in my rotation here. So Anna Phillips, thank you so much for being here. Maybe you can talk a little bit about yourself and your organization. But you have to unmute. Sorry, Anna.
Got ahead of myself, sorry. Similar to Cheryl, I've been in HR for quite a while. Started in retail and went into financial services, then to pharmaceutical, and I'm now with a medical and safety devices organization called Dräger. 15,000 employees right across the globe. Company is, 132 years old. It's a German-based company. We make ventilators, respirators, anesthesia machines for hospitals. So in the middle of a pandemic, we've been extremely busy. We do also have a safety arm, which makes breathalyzer machines, gas detection, mine services, fire rescue, so very into emergency services as well. And it's been a huge amount of push for an essential services organization, and happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. I'm looking forward to getting some information about how you've had to handle the growth as well as managing a lot of other issues in HR. With being, I'm sure your business is growing at a rapid rate. You're being pushed to the limits, that's for sure. So Jimmy, you're next on the rotation. So maybe you can introduce yourself and your organization.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. First off, again, my name is Jimmy Tristowski, and I'm the Vice President of People Operations at a company called Build With Assembly. Essentially, I like to wear many hats at the organization, but I primarily sit at the executive leadership table as a voice of the people and an advisor to the business, particularly focusing my efforts on strategy and the health of the organization. Prior to Build with Assembly, I held leadership positions at a couple of tech darlings in Toronto, such as Top Hat, which is in the edtech space, and The Score, which was esports and media. And I consulted for
I think you were frozen for a second there.
Oh, okay.
After The Score.
Yeah. Sorry, I was saying that after The Score, I consulted for a lot of, prior to those experiences, I consulted for a lot of different companies. But a little bit more about the current company that I'm in. We're an organization that's driven to give people time back in their day. And we do this by solving challenges people experience in their lives that can be made a lot easier with technology. So particularly, we've partnered with companies like Honda, Acura, Canon, Brookfield, the list goes on, to help them adopt cloud and build technology assets essentially needed to transform their business. So essentially in digital transformation. Additionally, we're launching People Ops as a service as a part of the business as well, with the ultimate mission of modernizing HR and focusing on a more scientific and data-driven approach to flip traditional HR on his head. And finally, we've had a couple pretty cool accolades recently, such as being on Profit 500, best places in technology to work for, as well as being ranked as the 30th best company to work for in Canada's Great Places to Work for our category.
Wow. Well, that's quite the resume. That's thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Also picking your brain. And Samir, Kumar, so we have, we're going to end with you in terms of an introduction and maybe a little bit about your organization as well.
Sure. Thanks, Rachel. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here in the HR conference. So at present, I'm working in Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services, and I work as a human resources professional. So I work mostly at the front end, so it's more of a generalist role. So I do everything of, say, employee relations, labor relations, health and safety, talent performance, unions. So it's all of it, which is mixed. So our organization is a mid-sized organization, which is a 5,000 employees all across Canada and also outside Canada. So we are working with the Canadian Forces military bases. So the military is the client. So that's the biggest client of our company is the military. So we work in each and every Canadian Forces base. That's from Army, Air Force, and Navy. So that's for my present organization. And I started my career in a steel manufacturing company, which was in India. So I worked as HR manager there for more than 10 years before I came to Canada. And before my present job, I was working as HR consultant in Success Defined. So that was a project-based consultancy in which I worked. And in terms of education, I have CHRP and bachelor's in economics, a diploma in human resources management. And yes, this COVID-19 has been a challenging aspect for us also, because we have looked at various options to do different tasks and processes, such as recruitment, orientations, interviews. So we have done that all through the virtual technology. So that has been challenging for us also. Thanks.
Thank you very much for being here. I'm going to come back to you as one of my questions. So I'm going to come back to you on the virtual interviewing. So I'm going to start with you, Jimmy. You brought up a point which I think is really integral right now for a lot of people that are in a position of HR or recruitment, and that is modernizing and kind of digitizing everything that you were doing during the interview and recruiting process prior to March 2020. So we have all, as HR people and HR professionals, had to really pivot and shift and adapt. I think almost into 5 years, probably where we would have been in 5 years from now. And we had to do it within a very quick time frame. So Maybe you could talk a little bit about what that looks like in your organization and what processes that you're doing to really modernize the kind of traditional recruitment process that we were used to in terms of live interviews and face-to-face kind of interaction, and the whole process has really kind of been flipped on its head. So what are you doing in your organization to really modernize and pivot to kind of keep up with what's happening in the economy?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we're generally very well positioned to be able to handle this because we're a remote first company anyway. So when the pandemic did hit, it wasn't as difficult as a transition for us to move into a more digital space, right? We like to practice what we preach and being in digital transformation. Obviously, that was a lot easier as a people ops team to shift over to more like virtual type of work and everything that we do. In terms of the recruiting space, it's obviously best to see people in person because you get a feel for that person, and you want to understand the entire person, like the entire candidate DNA, as we call it. So like the behavioral drives, cognitive ability, values, passions, interests. That's sometimes more difficult to do if it's more virtual. But what I recommend to a lot of people and what we do is to embrace some of that change and to embrace technology. A lot of people are a little bit worried as to what technology may do for their jobs in the future, but what we found is it just makes our job much more simple, and we can focus on the more strategic initiatives and the more important initiatives rather than, always focusing on the administrative side. So we have a pretty stringent process. It's on our website, actually. You can go and see it at assemblyhq.com for how we hire and what we do. But we use a lot of different types of tools and resources to essentially discover those things that we were talking about, the candidate DNA. So to understand their knowledge, skills, and abilities, cognitive ability, passions, values, interests. We use virtual platforms to be able to do that, like Microsoft Teams. And we have a pretty stringent process where they get to meet a lot of different team members. So we still want to have that face-to-face interaction. It's just virtual compared to in person.
It is, and it takes a lot to get used to. We run a lot of events for job seekers, trying to do community outreach and really help them through all of this new way of interviewing and job search. And there's just so many. You think that it seems simple to do a virtual interview, but there's so many things that go hand in hand that you have to learn. Like you have to relearn. Even when I started doing these events, it's I was always looking at the screen rather than looking at the camera. So someone gave me advice to put this little sticky note beside the camera, so I always remember to look at the camera so I'm making eye contact with you. So just all these little things that you think it's you just hop on a camera and it's straightforward, but there's a lot. And watching myself was like the biggest tip that I received, and it was so painful to sit on here and watch and pick myself apart at every little and ah, and every time I looked away from the camera, it was really difficult to do. But these are all things as hiring managers are really important for us to do as well, not just job seekers to practice that, but also as HR managers, we're representing our organizations and the way we're conducting ourselves. So important for us to kind of learn those things too. So it was really an interesting learning curve. And Cheryl, yeah, well, thank you for sharing that information. You sound like you guys have a lot of really cool up and coming practices, or a lot of modern kind of digital things you're doing at your organization, which is amazing. So I'm going to come back to you on that. So Cheryl, I know you mentioned when we were discussing and before we went live, you do a lot of virtual digital collaboration. So is that from a standpoint of helping teams collaborate and helping within the organization, or is that externally? Or maybe you could touch on that a little bit.
Sure. So building on what Jimmy said, the organizations I've worked with have been international. So in my last role, for instance, I had a team of 11 that reported to me into China. And I actually only met one person in the flesh. For 4 years, I managed that team virtually through a digital platform. And I've been through like Skype and Zoom and very many versions of Zoom and Microsoft Teams. And I'm sure there'll be more digital platforms in the future to learn. So it's always been a case of continuous adaptation. The one thing that I would say about digital collaboration is just the whole communication and connection part. How you keep people engaged right from the moment, even prior to starting a Zoom call, putting the agenda together, making sure people feel included, making sure they feel heard. The whole issue around digital body language even is really challenging because as Jimmy has mentioned, and I listened to an earlier interview, we rely so heavily as human beings on body language. This is about 70% of the message. So there's quite an adaptation to learn how to do that in a digital space. So I found that was really helpful. Helping teach leaders too how to make sure that people feel that they belong to the team, that they're heard. The other thing I think that the pandemic's done in terms of digital collaboration is it's intermingled now the personal and the professional, where you get I remember I had one contact in the Netherlands where her bird was in her kitchen, and that's where she always took the Zoom call. So I got to know the bird, and when I left the team, I said goodbye to her bird as well. So there's a degree of intimacy today that I think will stay on with us post-pandemic. As people are becoming used to, I don't know whether it's working from home or living at work, because in Europe they refer to this phenomenon as living at work.
Yes, no, absolutely. I've had a few instances of, I have an 8-year-old, so I've had a few instances of her but people seem to like it. Like it they want to talk about her and they want to know about her a little bit more, and it helps me connect with other people. So I totally, hear what you're saying from that perspective. It's been kind of nice to get to know people on a different level. That's for sure. Not birds yet, but people and kids. So Anna, thank you so much for that. Also, Cheryl, for all that information. So Anna, you're in obviously a position of healthcare, supplying supplies to our hospitals. A lot of pressure in that situation. I'm sure your employees are feeling a lot of pressure. So, how do you keep up with ensuring your employees' mental health is in check, and how are you communicating, with your employees in a time like this?
That's a great question. So what we've introduced last year was 20 what we call COVID days. And those are paid days where you can take time off for childcare, which seems to be our number one reason for it. Symptoms, positive results, high risk, all those different things that are specifically pandemic related, because we have remote employees right now. Those who can work from home are working from home. However, we do have people in our warehouse and our service centers who have no choice but to physically have to come into our premises. And so our 20 COVID days are really for them, over and above their sick days and their vacation days. I'm finding, as the HR contact, there are HR people on my team for Canada, 150 employees. I tend to be the voice of, I'm the sounding board, I'm the motivator, I'm the person trying to keep people upbeat, and also provide, information on our benefit services, on our employee assistance program, making people feel connected in some way and that they're not alone in how they're feeling, because all of us are going through this pandemic and there is no playbook for it. So a lot of reassurance going on there. And I want to say, and I'm hearing this from my US colleagues as well, it's a bit of pressure on HR to stay on all the time and to be that positive and motivator when everyone is feeling a little fatigued right now with COVID.
Yeah, I mentioned that in my opening statement before the conference. Is hats off to all HR people right now. You're dealing with mental health issues. You're dealing with changing of processes and strategies and diversity. It's just all kind of coming down on your shoulders. So hopefully someone's checking in on all of you guys too. Well, that's amazing. I'm glad to hear that your organizations put so much thought and effort into, taking care of your employees, because it is challenging. And now with the kids being home from school, it adds another, we've done it before, but it's, oh my God, we have to do this again, this whole work from home and school. And it's nice when you hear organizations that are taking such an active role in taking care of their employees, because it's hard. I'm a mom too, and I have my daughter here, and most days I feel very guilty after a work day. I've kind of neglected her, all day. So there are these challenges that are happening with everyone in the workplace. So that's great to hear. And thank you for sharing. So Samir, I want to talk a little bit in your intro of yourself. You talked a little bit about virtual interviews and how that's changed in a lot of your, obviously all interviews are now virtual, but maybe you could share some strategies of what you're doing in your workplace to kind of transition into an all virtual environment in terms of whether it be interviewing or onboarding.
Oh yeah, means the last 1 year in the COVID, the situation has changed, and we have been doing more virtual interviews. So so we do virtual interviews through MS Teams. So that's the platform that we use. And then we had a lot of challenges while doing it because the hiring managers were not used to it. So like we had to interact with the hiring managers a lot, first of all, so that they are proficient with the technology. So yeah, we had to send out a lot of instructions regarding that on how to log into the virtual interviews, how to go about it, how to set up the interview also. Like the interview invites, the hiring managers were not able to send the interview invites also. So we also interacted with the hiring managers to get that going. And of course, it's like a continuous interaction and continuous coordination with the screened candidate with whom we are interviewing, so that there's no issue in the technology. So that has also been there. So these are some of the things that we have used in interviews. And similarly in orientations, like we have been doing orientations online now. Earlier it used to be done physically in the office, where we used to call the employee and then do the orientation with the employee. But now it's being done virtually. So virtually we are having the issue of, again, technology, because there were some videos that we used to show to the employees who used to start with us. And some of the videos were really big. So we adjusted our videos to make it small. So we resized the videos so that there is no interference in the technology when we share the screen during the orientations. So those are some of the challenges we faced, but now we have overcome all those challenges.
That's great. That's great to hear. Yeah, a lot of technical. If you're not a tech savvy person, you've had to become one very quickly. So it's been a challenge from that perspective, I'm sure, in terms of all the recruiting that has to be done from there's, sometimes technology isn't working, or it's, things are interfering, or Rogers goes down, just for a whole day. So, which who can plan for that, right? And I want to talk to you a little bit about, for sure, just a little bit about employee engagement. So, a lot of, in your organization, you say you have a lot of people working in the warehouses and that sort of thing, and they got to keep their distance, and it's, it's a challenge, and everyone's working at home, so there's not any more water cooler chat or anything of that nature. So how have you guys been doing, like putting a focus or emphasis on employee engagement? And maybe you can talk about a couple strategies that you might have for those that are attending that are looking to kind of increase their employee engagement in their organizations.
Sure. So we've had a social committee. Our main building is in Mississauga, but we have employees right across the country. Our social committees expanded all of their reach to all employees across the country. So when there are holidays, when there are events, we just recently celebrated the 30th anniversary of our managing director and invited everyone, whoever was in the office, including myself, had a cake that we celebrated with, and we had videos, and all of it was online through MS Teams, similar to Samir. Unfortunately, we couldn't share the cake with everybody, but it became a very inclusive thing. So keeping our social committee going was a big one. Being able to share videos and some of the virtual that we were talking about in recruitment, having panel interviews. seeing people's pets running across the screen really humanizes things and puts some humor into meetings, or, you know, kids, or the fact that we all have a personal life outside of our work life has really expanded people in embracing camaraderie and the humanness of this, and created a lot of humor in the face of something as tragic as a pandemic. So some of those are just some of the things coming up from employees as suggestions that we've really taken and embraced, and been able to really share best practices around, you know, meeting tips and being camera ready and all the things you were just talking about, Rachel. I'm looking at you down there, but I should be looking up here at my camera, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else on, you know, where is the camera on my iPhone and all those other things. So it's really expanded people and put a human face on a lot of work challenges that you would never have seen pre-pandemic. So there have been some positives coming out of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. So we have 2 minutes left. Cheryl, I wanted to kind of touch base with you. I know you're working with a lot of different organizations, and what would be your most common challenge? I know there's a million challenges right now, but what kind of is the one that stands out the most with organizations you're working with, and what's kind of your biggest strategy for success surrounding that challenge?
Right. For sure, most of my clients are coming to me with anxiety, and it doesn't matter how long you've been in business. A lot of uncertainty out there. Certainly, I've been supporting my clients through, you know, deeper reflection. A lot of it's really rocked their self-confidence, and a lot of issues around self-doubt. Will my business survive? Will my relationship survive?
Absolutely. Oh, did she? I think.
And so I've been using a survive, revive, thrive strategy to help people develop their resilience skills and just see the possibilities. And I'm happy to say that a number of my clients have gone on to meet and exceed their goals during the pandemic. The pandemic has not been all bad. Even as a business coach, all the experience I had in the digital world certainly has helped me, because today my coaching is not just restricted to, you know, entrepreneurs in the GTA. I have the plastic surgeon actually that I'm working with in St. John's, Newfoundland. I'm not sure I would have even thought of that 5 years ago, but the pandemic has magnified, I think, and accelerated trends. And I don't think we'll be able to put the genie back in the bottle once this pandemic is over. I think this will be our new normal.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And thank you for sharing. And we have 1 minute left. So Jimmy, I'm going to end with you. You seem to be very up on, you know, modern technology. What are your thoughts for the next 6 months, and what are your kind of your organization's plans for if we open back up? What does that look like? Is it I know you said a lot of people currently are working from home, or you've always kind of practiced working from home, but what does the next 6 months look like for your organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first off, just to clear it up, we did have a hybrid model where you could go into the office, but it was never frowned upon if you took as many work from home days as you wanted. Once the pandemic hit and we did that transition, following some engagement surveys, and then diving deeper into that to understand what do people actually prefer. Because again, that face-to-face interaction that everybody else here has mentioned is super important, is now gone. But what we found in our company, and I would assume that trends would follow, people have kind of gotten used to this type of environment, and they do like it because it provides a different level of work-life balance. And in our company in particular, when we went back to it, 100% of the company, even they said they just want to stick to always being remote and never having to go into the office at all. And only a handful of people said, you know, they would once in a while like to go in there for like client engagement or team collaboration. So I think, like Cheryl mentioned, this is going to be more of a new normal. I think there will be some more hybrid structures that start to get built out as we move into the next 6 months. But I think more and more people will embrace technology because they see that these types of jobs can be done at home with the right type of balance if you have the necessary technology. And there's a lot of challenges that are going to be popping up specifically in people ops, and I think more companies are going to hire more practitioners in this area, which is what the trends are following. Once you move remote, you need more people ops people, especially in a variety of specializations, particularly onboarding, like Samir mentioned. That's going to be a more and more difficult situation, right? Because you are virtual. So it's hard to really pinpoint what's going to happen in the next 6 months, but you can see where the trends are developing, and it's similarly to what everybody else has mentioned here on the panel.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for that, Jimmy, and thank you to all of you for all of your strategies and sharing, what your organizations have been doing to, kind of capture all of these different areas of HR that are rapidly pivoting and changing. So really appreciate all of our panelists for being here today and all of our speakers. We had some amazing sessions before the panel even started. So a lot of information for attendees to take away. Thank you guys so much for being here. We host a lot of different events. We do a lot of community outreach, and we host these things to try to connect the HR world still, even though we can't be live. And all of the information on our events can be found on eventlogic.ca. So that's Event Logic with a K. We do events in entrepreneurship. We do events in job search for people that are looking for employment. We really have done a lot of outreach for that group. We have HR recruiting events. So again, all the information can be found on Event Logic, and this is presented by TorontoJobs.ca. So we do recruitment and all things recruitment for local Greater Toronto Area businesses. So thank you again to everyone for being here. Thanks to our panelists, and we hope to see you at one of our next events. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.